kind of just pops right out. I've spent so much of my life wishing that Nintendo made movies. Like real ones. Not those weird old adaptations we used to get that only loosely resembled the source material, or that came during times when these series weren't very well established themselves, with only 1 or 2 games under their belts. Considering they were adapting NES games, I think they probably did an okay job. But man, I spent so many years wishing for more, waiting for Nintendo to take another shot, a real shot. And this is something I don't hear people talk about too often, so I don't know how widely known it is, but we very nearly got a Metroid movie back in the early 2000s. In the description, I'll link a really terrific video going over the whole thing, but basically, John Woo was going to make a Metroid movie. A whole trilogy was the plan, actually, which was news to me, but his production company couldn't get Nintendo to work with them to flesh out the character of Samus because apparently Nintendo didn't even know who Samus was themselves, which is very Nintendo. I remember reading articles about the movie too, but it never panned out, and eventually it became obvious that it just wasn't happening. And hey, maybe it's for the best. Considering a lot of the video game movies we did get back in those days, there is a very good chance that the Metroid movie would have been a big disappointment. And the series does not need a stain like that on its record. And after the 90s Mario movie, and I guess The Wizard, technically, that was really the closest we got to a big Hollywood Nintendo movie for many years. I mean, you've got the Pokemon movies, but that's kind of its own animal, and the movies are based off the anime more than anything, you know? But for Nintendo themselves and their other big IPs, we got nothing. All these years, they just didn't feel like trying again. I mean, I can get that they were cautious, but I just didn't understand how they could sit on these legendary IPs without doing anything with them outside of games. But then, finally, it happened. Nintendo gave us a new Mario movie, and personally, it was what I'd been waiting for. No, it's not a perfect movie, it's not the best movie, but it's a real, honest-to-goodness adaptation that doesn't take the source material, jumble it all up, and rebuild its disjointed elements into a product that might, in theory, appeal to general audiences while completely leaving series fans out in the cold. No, it's a Mario movie. It is Nintendo's own vision of Mario on the big screen. It's a humongous love letter to the entire series made by people who have clearly been playing the games for decades. It's as faithful as I could ever want, and that's what matters most to me. And I guess the success of the Mario movie fully shook Nintendo out of their movie adaptation paralysis, because it wasn't long before they announced they were already working on the next Mario movie and a Zelda movie. And I'm a little mad because I wanted to make this exact video a lot sooner, but I kept putting it off, and then they announced both of those movies, and now I have less to talk about. But oh well. Point is, now that Nintendo is very much in the movie-making business, finally, the obvious question is, what other movies can we expect to see from them? What other Nintendo IPs might be adapted to the big screen? Well, it's an exciting thing to ponder, though if I'm honest, it's probably not actually as exciting as one might like. Most of the discourse I see on this topic is, I hate to say, not realistic. There's a very big difference between what a fan wants to see and what might actually happen. Regardless of how much money you would pay to see your favorite series adapted, the cruel reality is that a movie has to appeal to a much wider audience than just the fans of the series it's based on. If you're putting a film in theaters, it has to reach a wide audience. It has to. For many series, literally every single fan could go see the movie, and that still wouldn't even almost be enough to make the movie a success. Whatever it is, it's got to appeal to at least a good chunk of people who have never played the games before. The only reason a movie gets made is so the executives funding it can turn a profit. And it is very, very easy for a movie to flop if you don't play your cards right. Nintendo wants to make money, and everyone else involved in their movies want to as well. This is why video game adaptations have had such a rocky history. This is why executives tend to tamper with the source material until they've got an unappealing Frankenstein's monster of a movie that nobody likes. A straight-up, perfectly faithful adaptation that satisfies fans while also getting your average non-gaming folks to show up is a very rare thing. And making matters worse, Hollywood has only gotten more and more risk-averse as the years have passed. They were once a lot more willing to experiment. But nowadays, it's harder than ever to get projects greenlit unless execs are reasonably certain that they'll get a hefty return on investment. And you know what? I hate knowing this. I hate recognizing that by the time Nintendo finally felt comfortable making movies again, the industry had become a much less welcoming place. I want to go back to being a kid and believing that at any given moment, there was at least a chance that some wild adaptation of something obscure that I loved was being worked on somewhere. Just believing that a trailer could drop out of nowhere. I remember spending a lot of time on Zelda fan sites. Shout out to Ganon's Tower. Not sure how many people remember that one. And one person did this detailed write-up about how they could make a theme park based on Ocarina of Time, and it would be a full recreation of the whole world on an island somewhere. And I definitely knew that the idea was at least a little far-fetched, but there was still part of me that was like, I mean, you never know. I miss being that person. But I am not that person anymore. I am a cynical old realist. But hey, if that's who I gotta be now, I might as well use it to create content. I want to use what I know about the game and film industries and try to predict what else Nintendo might adapt realistically. Not based on my own desires, but on what seems to be genuinely feasible. And since we're being realistic here, it means that the list of feasibly adaptable IPs isn't incredibly long. There simply aren't that many Nintendo IPs that will get enough tushes in seats and offer a high enough ROI for investors. Now, it's absolutely true that there is nothing wrong with smaller projects that make moderate amounts of money. Nintendo is one of the few big publishers who know this. It's the only reason we get literally anything from them apart from Mario and Pokemon and Animal Crossing. But movies aren't games. You've got more outside parties in the equation. You've got extremely huge marketing costs. You've got to sell tickets to physical seats. It's also a matter of opportunity costs. If it takes the same amount of money to make a movie from one series as it does to make a movie from another series with 10 times the fans and way more overall cultural relevance, then it's not even worth making that first movie. Why put all that money and effort into something that's doomed to perform much worse from the very start? Nintendo is most likely going to stick with their biggest and most recognizable IPs. Mario is the most obvious, so let's talk about him. The main series of straight-up, regular old Super Mario Bros. Movies can essentially spawn any number of sequels. I mean, the material is there. The first movie had carts. Other movies can have parties, or sports, or return to the carts, whatever. I don't think they're going to start pulling more obscure elements from, like, the RPG games or anything, but even just your basic Mario elements can probably carry the series pretty far. Characters, that's another thing. Next movie will clearly feature Yoshi, then they can slowly bring in ya Daisies, ya Warios, and whatnot. Heck, they could probably turn Super Mario Galaxy into its own entire movie if they wanted. That would work. It's true that it won't be easy to maintain this forever. They will eventually run low on these basic concepts, and Nintendo doesn't like to put out a product unless they feel it's got a strong enough hook, enough of a unique identity. They probably could release a Mario movie every 3 years until the end of time and still make a decent profit on each one, but that's not their style. So I do see them slowing down eventually. They're producing a quick sequel right now, but for all we know, that'll be it for a while. Who knows? And I know I'm thinking very far ahead, but when all the actors get too old for these roles, eventually it will happen. Does Nintendo recast or eventually reboot the whole thing? I really have no idea there, but we can be confident that they've got enough material to make Mario movies for the foreseeable future. Now, it's definitely worth noting that these movies probably will not all make $1 billion. For all we know, the third movie, for example, will be only a modest success, and that will be their signal to stop for a while. That's generally how this kind of thing goes. You see how long you can ride the wave. If each movie makes less and less, then that tells them they need to ease up. But that's where we'll just have to wait and see. The thing about the Mario series, though, is that it is ripe for spin-offs. And if this is something Nintendo decides to pursue, it'll help alleviate alleviate the series fatigue that might occur with nothing but endless mainline sequels. A spin-off gives them a chance to lean a little heavier on the source material, pull from a little deeper. You get more unique scenarios with more unique characters, and anytime you introduce a new character, you've got a chance of them resonating with fans and propping up the IP further. A DK spin-off is a surefire winner. I am confident there. DK doesn't sell a lot of games, and indeed, Nintendo hasn't really given the guy too many chances to sell games recently, but he's DK. He's one of the OG famous video game characters. If there's any Nintendo character that is at least as recognizable as Mario, it's obviously DK. Older audiences have memories of playing Mario back in the day, and DK shares that same honor. So I think anyone who enjoyed the Mario movie will probably show up for a DK movie as well. It might not be quite as big of a hit, but pitch it to the investors, and it's a 100% safe bet. And there's certainly a chance that it could turn into its own series, though I could see Nintendo experimenting with a show again, maybe to go along with a movie. A new Kong show using all the characters the series has amassed over the years, that would be incredible. Though it's possible that they wouldn't want to make another DK show when they already did that once. I don't know. Peach, I could also see getting her own movie. It's slightly riskier because if it's seen as being for girls, then it might alienate much of the audience. I don't like that that's how the market be. I certainly want to see a Peach movie, but sometimes that's how the market be. If these Mario and Mario-adjacent movies continue to perform well, though, I could see it working. I think if Nintendo played their cards right, they might be able to get in on that Disney princess pie, and you know that's something they're very much interested in. I think it would be amazing if Peach became a popular character in her own right, especially if that meant more games. Then you've got Luigi, who might even be a little more likely. And I absolutely cannot believe that I'm saying this. I can't believe that I am speaking these words from a purposefully realistic and even borderline cynical perspective and meaning them. But a Luigi's Mansion movie is not impossible. It's not. Even if you look at it from the perspective of general audiences and return on investment and all that stuff, the idea is solid. Luigi is very lovable, more so than Mario, really. Luigi's Mansion 3 sold a ton. Charlie Day as Luigi went over really well. The character could absolutely hold the audience's attention. His whole thing is that he's scared, so a spin-off where he's in a spooky mansion is the perfect Halloween movie. How close would a Luigi's Mansion movie be to the games? Would it be about sucking up ghosts with a vacuum? Honestly, even that sounds pretty likely. It's a great hook, it's very visual, it acts as a bit of a Ghostbusters homage. Again, it's solid. Cast Mark Hamill as Egad and, I don't know, Benedict Cumberbatch or something as King Boo. You've got a movie that is faithful enough for fans and attractive enough for general audiences. Then, of course, there's Bowser. I don't know exactly what a Bowser movie would look like, because I could see Nintendo feeling that there's not much point to Bowser without Mario, so while I think it could absolutely work, I don't really see it happening, unfortunately. And I think that's it for Mario. Technically, anything could happen. The movie that finally introduces Wario could go over so well that suddenly everyone is clamoring for a Wario movie, but I don't know, I'm not exactly counting on it at this time. I think mainline Mario plus spin-offs for DK, Peach, and Luigi, that's the safest bet. And these predictions are all about safe bets. That brings us to Zelda. Zelda is next in line as far as feasibly adaptable IPs go, but this one is a bit hard to predict because we don't have a basis for comparison like we do with Mario. The Zelda movie is still in early production, and we simply have no idea how it's gonna go over. The future of the IP's movies depends entirely on the success of this first movie. And the thing is, I feel that Nintendo is taking a really big risk going live action. I know I'm not the only one. How do you ensure that the movie is faithful and captures the spirit of Zelda without making it feel, campy and weird? I do understand that when you're looking at a more mature series, making it animated kinda shrinks the audience. It's another sad reality that we may not like, but it's just kinda how things go. Animation aimed at kids is a big moneymaker. Animation aimed more at adults just isn't quite so much. Zelda isn't like hardcore violent or anything, but it's a far cry from the lighthearted silliness of Mario, the kind of thing that you bring the whole family to see, and Nintendo has got to contend with that. I would say an animated Zelda movie would have had a higher chance of being a good movie. Live-action Zelda can be a good movie too, and it has the potential to be more successful, but it's gonna be much harder to stick the landing. If it fails, Nintendo will be looking at a really, really expensive flop, and that will probably mean no more Zelda movies for the foreseeable future. I'm preparing myself for that outcome, honestly. That's not to say that I'm sure it will fail or anything, but it seems at least likely enough that we should at least be prepared. For the sake of predicting, though, let's assume that the movie will be good. It won't be a dramatic flop or anything. I still can't personally see it doing that well, at least compared to Mario, I don't know. I see it being a solid success. Unfortunately though, I don't see it spawning a whole series or having a sequel immediately greenlit. I could easily see it being a one and done kind of thing, especially because Nintendo is all about telling the same story over and over again with Zelda, and once the movie covers the basic plot, Link's humble origins, Zelda's plight, finding the Master Sword, Ganondorf doing bad stuff, then going Ganon mode at the end, then that's basically it. That's Zelda. Anything beyond that will either be a rehash or the kind of expansion that the games sometimes play with, but that won't resonate as much with general audiences largely looking for familiarity, their nostalgia fix. So further movies aren't out of the question, but I don't feel that they're super likely unless somehow the first movie is a massive hit that offers a tremendous return on investment. Maybe like one sequel several years later, then nothing for a long time. And as much as I would love to see spin-offs, a movie all about Zelda herself, a complete Ganon origin story prequel, a raunchy road trip comedy starring Tingle, Beetle, and the Mailman, I simply don't see it happening. Which is exactly why Nintendo needs to get into making lower budget shows, but that goes without saying. And we are now, unfortunately, in the wishful thinking category of potential Nintendo movies. Let's start with Metroid. I think John Woo's Metroid was probably our only shot, and it didn't happen. Like I said, the industry is just a different place nowadays. A Metroid movie would be very expensive, and if the games can review so well and still see such middling sales, I don't think a movie would sell enough tickets either. It's frustrating being in this new era where video game movies are finally good, but also much less likely to happen for most series. But, it is what it is, I guess. It is worth mentioning that game sales don't necessarily have to correlate to movie ticket sales. And for the record, Kane, the editor of this video, is much more optimistic about the idea of a Metroid movie. If we end up getting one, Kane told me so. It is absolutely true that Metroid was originally inspired by sci-fi movies like Alien, and making a similar movie might appeal to a broad audience all by itself. I want to believe that's possible. I don't know, I just think it seems too unlikely. The format of Metroid doesn't lend itself to a project with a bunch of big-name actors, and that's what investors and executives are always looking for. So I don't know, maybe I'm being overly cautious here, but for now, I'm gonna stick with my gut and say that I don't see a Metroid movie happening. A Netflix limited series, though, I can see that. The Castlevania show keeps getting new seasons. Absolutely no reason why Nintendo couldn't do that with Metroid. One can dream, right? Then Kirby, same thing. We all know who Kirby is, but a Kirby movie wouldn't look all that appealing to general audiences. There's a chance that Nintendo could pull in a lot of kids, just based purely on how it looks. I mean, if anything, I'd say Kirby at least has a better chance than Metroid. But it's another case where a show seems much more likely, if anything. And like DK, maybe they wouldn't want to do that a second time. Splatoon. I also think that wouldn't make for a successful movie. It's too weird, but I do think the IP is absolutely ripe for adaptation, and I am genuinely surprised every day that goes by without Nintendo announcing a Splatoon show. I mean, I'm just waiting. Make your Mario and your Zelda movies, sure, but as far as shows go, I think Splatoon should be at the top of the list. The series is very popular, sales are great, the fandom is only growing, the world is very deep, the potential, it's absolutely there. And from here on out, it's the same story. It takes nostalgia to get general audiences in seats, or at the very least, massive popularity to bring in enough fans, and everything else Nintendo has to offer won't make for successful movies. It just won't. Pikmin, definitely don't see anything there. Probably not even a show, honestly. Maybe more shorts, I don't know. Star Fox, definitely not a movie, though I could see it making a great show. And maybe they won't want to unless they can produce another Star Fox game that actually sells, though. F-Zero, absolutely not. So niche that even just asking for a brand new game is apparently asking too much. Xenoblade maybe could be a series, but the plots seem so big and complex that they're probably better off just making the games and leaving it at that. It's already basically a show. Animal Crossing is interesting because it is massively popular, but my gut says the concept doesn't quite translate to the big screen. I mean, there is that one movie they did in 2006 and decided to never release in the West for some baffling reason. Like, that's a Nintendo movie right there that I guess they just don't care about because they never talk about it. There technically already is an Animal Crossing movie that most people have never seen, so I guess the precedent is kind of there. But a big Hollywood movie just doesn't make sense to me. It feels a little too quaint without much in the way of story or conflict or anything. You know what? I could be wrong, though. Illumination loves making movies about animals, so I don't know, maybe if they make it all wacky and fill it with animal gags, it could work. Tom Nook keeps asking where my mortgage payment is, and he's eating my trash. Tortimer is walking slowly, and everyone's like, oh, hurry up, and that's the joke. I mean, hey, maybe this does work. I could go on, but that's basically everything worth talking about, and we should absolutely talk more about the idea of what Nintendo series should have shows later. That's clearly a conversation we need to have. But there's one more thing to address. When this whole Nintendo movie conversation first got rolling with the announcement of the Mario movie, there was one idea on basically everyone's mind. Marvel popularized the idea of a shared cinematic universe connecting several properties and eventually tying them together in a big crossover event, and it is all too easy to see the same thing for Nintendo. They've even got a game series that does that already, a Super Smash Bros. Movie. Nintendo makes movies for most of its beloved IPs, then brings them all together for the Nintendo movie to end all Nintendo movies. It would be glorious. Well, by now you understand the issue here. All those other non-Mario and non-Zelda series probably aren't getting movies. We'll be lucky if they get shows. I will admit, even that would be a pretty great outcome. Even if it's a cinematic universe shared between movies and shows, I'll take it. I don't need them to be movies. But really, Nintendo probably won't have a bunch of non-game material to pull together. There might not ever be a new Kirby show, or Star Fox, or Pikmin, or whatever. Right now, you may be nodding your head slowly with a sorrowful look in your eyes, sighing and saying to yourself, I guess this is where Arlo declares that a Smash movie is absolutely out of the question, and ends the video on a sad note. Well, my friend, that's where you are incorrect. True, Nintendo probably won't end up pulling together a bunch of pre-existing movies or shows or whatever to make a Smash movie, but a big crossover event is absolutely in the cards. Think about it. The Mario movie established that tons and tons of worlds are connected together via these warp pipes. Peach says it herself during her little Act 2 monologue. If we want to see our favorite Nintendo characters up on the big screen, this is the key. The pipes can lead to any world Nintendo wants. They can make a movie, frame the whole thing like a Mario movie, have him front and center on the poster, make Bowser the villain again, do everything they need to get general audiences interested. Then make the plot all about pulling together a bunch of other Nintendo IPs from other worlds. Bring in Kirby, Link, Pikachu, Fox, maybe even a tiny little Olimar for comedic effect. Bring in general audiences, introduce the nostalgia factor for those who have played at least some of these smaller series over the years, appeal heavily to the massive Smash community, and there you go. you've got a Smash Bros. Movie. Call it Smash, a Super Mario Brothers movie, or something like that. And this would put these lesser-known IPs in front of millions and millions of new eyes. Bringing in these characters would actually benefit Nintendo and not just us fans. Have your cake and eat it too. They would have to be careful. The movie would still have to focus on Mario more than anything. If the trailer is packed with less immediately recognizable Nintendo characters, then there could be a problem. But achieve a good balance, and everyone wins. This, to me, is another really great outcome that isn't actually all that far-fetched. Realistically, I don't see it happening for a while, not until like the third Mario movie at least, and probably even later. But it could happen. A Smash movie is not out of the question, and it feels real good to say that. Well, that's all there is to discuss for now, but since this is a prediction video, let's end by coming up with a timeline for the next few decades. I'm extremely tempted to include my predictions for shows as well, but let's keep it simple and stick to theatrical movies. Here we go. 2026, Mario Movie 2. Doesn't quite match the success of the first movie, but it's still a big hit. 2028, Zelda movie. It does pretty good. Like, solid. At this point, the Nintendo movie machine is really rolling, so only a year later, 2029, we get the DK spin-off movie. And it's also a big hit, even a little bigger than the second Mario movie. 2031, Mario Movie 3. I could see this one being the Galaxy one. It's another good success. Then 2033, it's the Luigi's Mansion movie. It's the worst performing Mario movie so far, but still a decent success. 2035, you know what? Why not? Animal Crossing movie. Let's just go for it. Illumination, animal gags, the whole thing we talked about. Then things start to slow down a little for Mario. In 2036, we get a second spin-off in a row, DK Movie 2. It's also a modest success, which causes Nintendo to slow down a little more. We don't get another Zelda movie until 2037, 11 years after the first. Tom Holland has died of old age and needs to be recast. It's the first Nintendo movie to not really do so well at all, and it puts the Zelda movie universe on ice for the foreseeable future. Then, in 2041, 10 whole years after the third mainline Mario movie, Nintendo does it. The Switch 3 is nearing the end of its life. Nintendo Play-In kids have grown into adults with Nintendo Play-In kids of their own, so the audience has grown considerably. Kirby and Metroid and Splatoon and all the others are doing better than ever. Even Star Fox has finally got a decently successful game or two under its belt. So Nintendo gives us a Smash movie. It's a big event, and it does pretty darn well at the box office. But after that, Nintendo takes it easy. A Peach movie in 2046, but that's the last movie they ever put in theaters. Because the Scrabulars, extra-dimensional aliens that come from the wormhole that opens up over the Chicago Zoo in 2045, don't like theaters because they are too expensive, and it's impossible to enjoy the movie when everyone keeps talking. And the Scrabulars run the show now, whatever they say goes, and they are tough but fair leaders, but they are single-minded in their united distaste for theaters. And from that time on, movies are distributed exclusively using the Scrabulars' own technology, where visual content is delivered directly to the mind through the consumption of advanced, high-tech burritos. And there you have it, about 2 decades of Nintendo movies. The first several phases of a Nintendo cinematic universe, if you will. So those are my unfortunately realistic predictions. And I'll admit that even these assume that Nintendo will start pumping out movies like crazy, and that might not even happen. We might get Mario Movie 2 and Zelda, then nothing for decades. You know how Nintendo be. There is simply no knowing. Please give me your own decades-long realistic release timeline down in the comments. Also, a detailed explanation of why a Metroid movie actually is feasible. Please, convince me. I want to believe so badly.